So it's Christmas, and I think for this morning, we would do well to reflect a little bit on the notion of vulnerability. That would be an appropriate theme for any Christmas. But this year, it just feels a little more on point than usual. Now, vulnerability is one of those things. It's always sort of lurking within ourselves as with our common fears that we all share as people. And we all know what it feels like. Vulnerability is knowing that you're not in control, that someone has power over you somehow. So if someone can take away your money, or your home, or some other resource that you depend upon, that is vulnerability. Likewise, if someone can hurt you without any real chance of you defending yourself, that too would be vulnerability. And obviously, plenty of people feel vulnerable when they need to speak in front of a large crowd, or they're in some other potentially embarrassing situation. It's all the same. That sensation of vulnerability is knowing that you're not in control and that you are dependent on the mercy of others. And that can be a scary thought because we know that people are not always merciful. And furthermore, we are all feeling more vulnerable than usual this year because of the virus and its after effects. But we should be careful. We shouldn't feel too sorry for ourselves because 2020 style vulnerability is nothing compared to the most vulnerable people of all. And I'm talking about babies, small children. They are absolutely dependent on others in every possible way. Now, Christmas is our high holy day. We are celebrating the incarnation. Jesus Christ is God made man in the form of a tiny baby. I want you to take some time today to think about the total paradox that is at work here. We're talking about God being vulnerable. God as dependent as a literal newborn baby. That is definitely a paradox. When we think of God, we think of him as all-powerful, all-knowing, and invincible. And all of those things are certainly true, but he comes to us anyway in total meekness and humility. He chose to share in our vulnerability for our sakes, for our benefit. And that's just one of those things that you're not going to understand with ordinary reason. In terms of our common sense, Christmas makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I mean, it's not like God has anything to gain from the incarnation. He's God. He's maker of heaven and earth. He has nothing to gain in the first place. But you could make the argument that God has a great deal to lose with the incarnation. Because after all, if he's human, he could be abandoned, betrayed, tortured, even killed. That's the world that human beings have made. And of course, all of those things happened to Jesus in the course of his life. And so I say again, Christmas makes no sense in terms of our ordinary reason. But don't misunderstand. Christmas does make sense. There is great significance to all of this, and we do well to celebrate it properly. Christmas makes sense when you are open to divine revelation. Divine revelation means that God shares himself with us. Divine revelation is the understanding that God reveals himself out of love for us all. And that is Christmas. Christmas is an act of divine love and compassion in that self-revealing nature. And that means that it's not bound by the rules of ordinary reason. And don't get me wrong, reason is very important. It is a good thing in of itself, no doubt about it. It's just reason can't tell love and compassion what to do. Those things follow a different set of rules. God shares himself with us simply out of love and solidarity with us all. He shares in our human nature. He shares in our very vulnerability as a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes. So, are you getting it yet? We're talking about God, maker of heaven and earth, here as a baby, totally helpless and dependent on human beings. What a terrifying gamble. Why would he do that? Why would he do something so risky? And the answer is, it's an act of faith. God has put his faith in us. In spite of our continual failure to live up to our true potential. But then again, that is the self-giving love of Christmas at its heart. God will do anything for us at any cost to himself. So as we close this year, which most of us have no intention of revisiting, let's remember that Christ is with us. He shares in our human nature. He shares our very vulnerability, which means that for all of our misfortunes and hang-ups, he gets it. He knows where we're coming from, and he knows what we're struggling with. He is literally compassionate, which means to suffer with. Christ is at our side, even when we're suffering. Actually, especially when we're suffering. And in this, a year of suffering, that makes it a very fine time for us to see that and to reorient ourselves to him. It really is. So, in addition to that classic message of Emmanuel, God with us, I want to leave you for today with one final statement. Take it home with you. Keep it on your person until you get your share of the vaccine. Vulnerability is opportunity. Vulnerability is opportunity. It is times like these, the hard times, not so much the easy times, where we reveal who we really are to one another and to God above. It is times like these when we come together, we care about one another, we care to depend upon each other more. That is when we more effectively grow in the love and solidarity that God offers us every single day. And that is exactly what we celebrate in a special way here and now on Christmas. So in a few moments, let us gather at the altar of Christ to worship in truth and in spirit, and to remember just how vulnerable we can really be on our own. This year and every year.